So, it's finally back. My Hero Academia anime is back with the season 1 episode premiere with a new opening, a new ending, new scenes, but the fight that we've been looking forward to throughout the entire manga so far is here. And I am going to be doing my review of this episode. So, let's just dive right into it. Hey guys, how's it going? It is your boy, Manga Man Drew, and I'm here to do my review for My Hero Academia Season 7, Episode 1, titled, In the Nick of Time, a big-time maverick from the West. And the title of this episode is actually derived from the same name in the manga, from manga chapter 329. And to start off, the episode is actually covering around 3 chapters worth of content, starting with the ending page for chapter 328 and ending at the ending, and ending with the last panels of chapter 331. And I will talk more specifically about what we get in the episode and potentially leaving the opening and the endings to their own separate videos. But overall, I enjoyed both the OP and ending when it comes to both the animation and the music itself. But to dive right into the episode itself, the episode actually starts with an entire new original scene, not necessarily seen in the manga, where you have Deku kind of reflecting on his life and what he's gone through, especially what he went through the Dark Deku arc, as we get small clips of him remembering and reflecting on where he is now and how his mind state is a little bit normal, but he reflects on the fact that this isn't that bad, as we also get the fact that he is comfortable where he is now, with the fact that he is with the people that he cares about the most, his students of Class 1A, and how he's willing to work together with them to defeat All For One and Tomoe Shigaraki. And it's from this moment and this new scene that I really enjoy what the anime is doing. Many people may have had issues with how My Hero Academia was handling Deku in the manga, but the anime seems to be handling it in a way that may make those people a little bit more happy, as we see Deku potentially more reflecting on what he has gone through that is not necessarily seen, or in my opinion, needed in the manga. But from there, we actually get the opening, but then we get something that is also anime original, where we get to see a little bit more of, spoilers, Star and Stripe's teammates prior to them actually leaving America and heading to Japan, where we get a feel on how they are feeling about the world, as they literally get to see a news reporter in Japan reporting on the news as villains come in and hijack the actual news. And it really just shows how the world is in a form of disarray and how many people around the world are reflecting on it, but it's also technically the first introduction and first moment that we see Star and Stripe in her non-hero attire, as they are heading towards Japan to help out her master, All Might. And in this episode, we do get the understanding of how Star and Stripe is related to All Might, and it's not in the way that you may think. But from this fun interaction, we actually cut over to another scene that is directly ripped from the manga of All For One talking to Spinner about how all of this was setting up his master plan of hide and seek from the heroes, him releasing the villains to distract the heroes, and how he is able to control the villains across the world to basically make sure that his plans go off without a hitch. Where it's revealed that All For One does have multi-layers to his plan, and that another layer very much requires either the appearance of Star and Stripe and the taking of her quirk, which would guarantee victory in the war that he plans on starting. And how there's also building up for the other characters of the League of Villains playing major roles in this final war, but also showing that Spinner, the character that may seems to not be the most powerful, could potentially have the most sway when it comes to other heteromorphs or other mutant-based individuals following behind him and towards a greater goal. And something else I want to bring up in this moment is that as we get All For One talking about Spinner, we also have Skeptic speaking in this moment and talking about how the members of the League of Villains are sort of just going to be the pillars for the Paranormal Liberation Front's actual goals, as we get to see Toga and something pertaining to her, Dabi, but the most interesting aspect is Spinner, as he is being presented as Stain in this very cool transition. really just showing that he is more or less going to be a figurehead in the final battle alongside the other villains, and how they're going to be playing major parts in the actual story moving forward. So that's something else that I wanted to bring up. But from that scene, we get to see some heroes, specifically Best Jeanist, Hawks, and Endeavor, waiting the arrival of Star. But unfortunately, we see that it's intertwined and interjected by, quote-unquote, Tomura Shigaraki meeting up against Star first. And as we reach towards the middle point of the actual episode, this is where the fight between Star and Stripe and, quote, Tomura Shigaraki begins. And if you didn't know, the reasoning why I put it in quotes is because in this moment, Tomura is really questioning whether or not he's actually Tomura Shigaraki or is All for One. And later on in the episode, we get an explanation for what he is right now, which is a mixture or merger of the two. But it's from this moment on where the confrontation between Star and Stripe and Tomura Shigaraki begins, where we get to see a lot of well-animated scenes, from a close-up on Tomura's eye to a close-up of the fighter jet in motion, going and holding Star and Stripe on top, starting their assault. And this is where the fighting gets real good, and how the anime is doing the fight that we saw in the manga justice, where we get to see Star and Stripe just hopping around as we get the reveal of what her quirk is, as we see it in action, getting rid of the air that Tomura Shigaraki is in. And while not as detailed in the manga as it is in the anime, we get to see a lot of motion, very few moments where the characters are just standing still. The characters are always in motion, which is something that we would expect in a fight where there is no solid ground except for the planes and the Nomu that Tomura is riding on. And it's during this fight where we get to see a lot of cool action from Tomura using the lasers from these fighter jets, as well as the fighter jets having more or less EMP protection going at it, with Tomura firing off the lasers that were shot at him and Star using her new order to catch them, where we begin to get an understanding of how Star and Stripe's quirk New Order begins to work from the perspective of Tomura Shigaraki. But even before that explanation is given for us, we do get to see them finally clash, with Star and Stripe sending Tomura Shigaraki flying, where we get a little bit more character development from her, learning that her connection to All Might is a little bit more ambiguous, where she views All Might as her master because All Might was the individual responsible for saving her. And the scene that we see is more in a brownish tint, but the scene itself is not the first time we've seen it. It's actually a scene from My Hero Academia's Two Heroes movie, where we got to learn a little bit more about All Might's past in America, and how he saved a girl in Los Angeles, and that girl was actually Kathleen Bates, Star and Stripe's real name, and the person that was in that movie. So it kind of shows that the movies are canon to a certain extent. But it's with that understanding of who Star and Stripe is and her connection with All Might, we get to get a better understanding of how her quirk works, and how it is something to be feared because it almost kills Tomura Shigaraki outright. That because Tomura Shigaraki does not have a sense of self at this moment, it was very ineffective. Also, something else that I want to add in this section is just to talk a little bit more about how the anime depicts All for One and Tomura fusing, because after the moment where Kathleen Bates' Star and Stripes New Order doesn't work on Tomura Shigaraki, as we also get a cool animation of his hair growing, we get an explanation that Tomura and All for One are fusing together, and it's around 97 to 98%, and I really like how disgusting it looks and how gross it is, especially with the implication of what's happening to Tomura in this moment, and how this is the reasoning why New Order isn't working, because he isn't the All for One or Tomura Shigaraki that she believes that they are, and this ties into a better explanation for how New Order works that is explained in the actual episode itself. So this is something else that I want to bring up, and I liked how this scene was animated and how gross it looks compared to the manga. And what I like about this is that in the manga, we got an explanation of how Tomura Shigaraki in this moment, or as I would call him, Tomura for One, where we get the explanation in the manga, but in the anime, we get a little bit more visual representation of how the quirk works. Because in the manga, it's more or less just straight dialogue, but in the anime, we also get these little chibi images of both Tomura for One and Star and Stripe, and I really like how they interpret it this way, where it gives us something that we can actually see and visualize without it just being just a bunch of words being shown to us on the actual animation or just still images. It's a little bit more funner this way than what we got in the manga, and I enjoyed it. And I won't go in depth in exactly how New Order works because that can be its own section on its own, but we see that in this moment, Star is going to begin to not hold back, turning the air into a vestige of herself that has a lot of great animation and impact that you would not expect from an animation of someone being animated to be that large, moving that fast. And this is probably going to be the last type of jump cut that I want to make in this video, but I just really want to go over just how amazing the scene of Star and Stripe creating the image of herself of the air looks, because while it isn't like the best animated scene ever, how it flows in the actual fight looks amazing. And I may not be able to show it in the video, but just seeing how it smoothly uppercuts Tomura and then just slams him between the hands, and just how she's able to just fluidly just slam the laser into him, how it all just looks amazing and smooth and not necessarily bombastic, but it just looks great. And I just really want to gush a little bit more about that because that's probably one of my favorite moments and scenes in the episode. So yeah, I really enjoyed this part of the episode the most. And we see that along with all of this cool animation, she's able to use the second part of New Order, which she can only add 2 rules to at a time, to create this large woman and for her to hold the lasers and jam Tomura Shigaraki, or Tomura for One, into the ground. And something interesting about this moment is that you can tell that she is using 2 rules, but she isn't using it on herself, because you see that she looks more like the animation of all the other characters in the actual show than the more stylized version of her that we saw towards the beginning of this episode. Because she does have a stylistic change when she's actually using New Order on herself, and you can tell more in the anime than in the manga that this style is being used. But yeah, pretty much as the episode begins to conclude, we get to see Star and Stripe calling an individual named Akbar, which is very apt for this episode coming out on May 4th, of him just praising her, where we learn that she's called Cassie by Akbar, but also that we get to see that she has an actual relationship with All Might, as they are able to send state-of-the-art hypersonic intercontinental cruise missiles, Tiamat, with several of these missiles flying in the direction of Star and Stripe as the episode ends at this moment, as we do get the previews for the next episode showing that this fight isn't going to be just 1 episode, but at the bare minimum 2. And yeah, that's pretty much it for the episode itself. This time when it comes to my reviews, I'll try to keep them a little bit more quicker so that I can get them out a little bit faster. But overall, I would like to say that I really did enjoy this episode. I thought that the animation was on point. I think that they adapted the actual manga material amazingly, but made the adaptation better by adding more to it. And I think that that is what is making this first episode very promising, because it shows that they're going to be adapting it a little bit more. That this is going to be a more faithful and more appropriate adaptation for My Hero Academia, because we're going to get exactly what we got in the manga, but added more upon it. Something that we can all expect and want from a very good adaptation. But hey, that's just my opinion. I thought this episode was great, so let me ask you, what did you think of the episode? Did you like it? Did you dislike it? And how do you feel about Kathleen Bates, aka Star and Stripes, right now? Leave your thoughts down below, and don't forget to subscribe to my YouTube channel for more content like this. Do all that cool jazz, and hopefully I'll be able to catch you in my next video. Goodbye!